Hi guys, I'm Mike.
And I'm Ash.
And this is F1 Fanatics. Welcome back to the last race review podcast of the 2019 season and of the decade. I've said that far too many times. I'm like Sky Sports. Yeah. I keep ranting on about that it's the last decade. But obviously we were at Abu Dhabi yesterday. We weren't at Abu Dhabi, but the race was. And wasn't a classic.
No, it wasn't. It was a typical end of season, not much to fight for. Although the midfield tried their best.
And it was an exciting end, but obviously Sky not covering it.
Yeah. But, no. I was going to try to justify it by saying 6-time world champion finishing his lap, the final lap of the season. But no, it's not justified.
I mean, they could have panned that and then gone back to the midfield, but then they went to the Bottas-Leclerc flight, which Bottas had already gone past the overtaking zone. Anyway, from there. But basically, what we do in our race review podcast is we take a more in-depth look at the action that happened on track after, obviously, our initial race reaction that came out yesterday. Thank you if you were joining in the live stream. It was great from there. First off, apologies. Katie, your fantastic present is meant to go up there. I forgot it.
Or here.
Or there. One of the two.
We'll decide.
It's going to be there. But I forgot it this week. But it will definitely be the next time that we are back in filming here. Yes, it will be up on the wall. But today we will be looking at the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix. So let's kind of get into it. And the way that we always start a race review podcast is giving that 1 to 20. And luckily, from the race, it hasn't changed. So in position 1, we have Lewis Hamilton. A fantastic and absolutely dominating win from him, and that is certainly going to be our first discussion point today. Number 2, Max Verstappen. 3, Charles Leclerc confirmed after obviously avoiding that disqualification over the fuel discrepancy. 4, Valtteri Bottas, a fantastic race coming from the back. 5, Sebastian Vettel. 6, Alexander Albon. 7, Sergio Perez, finishing best of the rest. 8, Lando Norris. 9, Daniel Kvyat. 10, just squeaking into the points so that he could secure 6th in the Drivers' Championship was Carlos Sainz. A fantastic overtake on Nico Hülkenberg on the last lap. 11, Daniel Ricciardo, because he was able to overtake because Hülkenberg kind of squirreled out of turn 13, I think. Hülkenberg, P12. Kimi Raikkonen finishing best of Tier 3 in the Alfa Haas category. 14 was Kevin Magnussen. 15 was Roman Grosjean. 16 was Antonio Giovinazzi. 17 was George Russell. 18 was Pierre Gasly. Obviously was fighting for 6th place in the championship. Unfortunate involved in that bump at the start with Lance Stroll that led to him losing his front wing. 19, unfortunately a sad way for Robert Kubica to go out in his last Grand Prix, but it's been kind of where he's been all season, isn't it? And 20, the only retiree was Lance Stroll, and yeah, probably I think I didn't see official, but I assumed that it was through some knock-on effects from his collision at the start.
There wasn't really an announcement as to what it was, but it did appear that it was an underlying issue that had continued.
Yeah.
So.
But anyway, guys, there is 1 to 20 on the grid, and now we will give our thoughts on the race. So the first point, how can we not start off with that man, Lewis Hamilton, winning the last race of the season in a season that he is dominated again with his consistency and just been a relentless performer. Impressive, Ash, isn't it?
Yeah, 11 wins for the season, which is almost 3 times as many as anyone else. So when we look at it, Bottas got 4, and then Hamilton did get more than 3 times as many as anyone else, really, outside of a Mercedes, and almost got double the races of Ferrari and Red Bull put together. So, yeah, I think he did well this season.
He did all right. He did all right, and
room for improvement, but
he beat some records this race as well, which were very impressive. And what were they?
Well, beating records, matching records, and just continuing to add to everything else that he's got.
His pursuit of brilliance.
Yes. So the one record that he matched was that he actually led the race from start to finish, every single lap. So that is now 19 races where he's done that. That's equaling Ayrton Senna's record. He also got his 50th pole to race win, which he already had the record for that one. 49 was already 9 more than Michael Schumacher.
But first ever.
First to 50, brilliant result there for him. He also now goes ahead of Michael Schumacher in terms of Grand Slams. Still 2 off of Jim Clark, but getting a little bit closer.
But I remember when we did that video where it was the part 1 of our driver rivalries between them. Getting a Grand Slam is a massive achievement. So that's pole, winning the race, so that's pretty impressive in itself. Leading every single lap.
That's another layer.
And then fastest lap on top of that, which I believe he secured on the last lap of the race again, like Silverstone.
Wasn't the last, I think it was about 3 or 4 laps before the end.
Fair
it was on worn tyres, which once again shows the absolute pace that he had and how much he was driving within himself, because Bottas was on fresher tyres and he took the fastest lap off of him. So yeah, did quite well there. In general, what can you say? Qualifying looked absolutely dominant, but the Mercedes in general did, because Bottas, was it 2/10? I think it was in the end.
He was very close off.
I think it was about 2/10. So not the biggest gap, but 2/10 in an identical car is quite a big gap, really.
Yeah, and Bottas had looked quick all weekend as well. So that was, again, Lewis turning it on when it mattered. Something that actually had drifted away from him a bit this season in terms of poles, because obviously Charles Leclerc's...
I thought we were both going to go for it then. The fact that it was his first pole since Germany.
Yeah.
So,
and obviously,
that's a long...
Ferrari man, Charles Leclerc, has been the most dominant pole sitter this season.
So no, turn it on when he needed to, and then in the race, you sort of felt as if Verstappen needed to get past him going into turn 1 for him to have any chance, really, because we all know what Hamilton's like.
Did you watch any of the pre-grid walk?
I did watch some of it.
So obviously Josh Verstappen, Max's dad, was being interviewed, and he basically went, he's got to take him in turn 1, if not the race is over.
Yeah.
And that's literally how it unfolded. So well done, Josh, for predicting that. I think you had a nice little bet on that, although probably not the most unrealistic thing to predict.
So no, it was one of those where Hamilton was able to pretty much control the race, because I wouldn't say he blew Max Verstappen away, because I think it was just small gains every lap. But as I said, when it came to the fastest lap side of things, he was quite clearly driving within himself, because he sort of just turned everything up for that fastest lap, and there was still plenty of grip from the tyres. So yeah, it's not the nicest spectacle to see when it happens, but you can't take anything away from Hamilton there.
No, and I gave him, in the driver ratings video, a 10 out of 10. I thought it was just an absolute flawless, perfect weekend. Yes, for the entertainment of us F1 fans, we love to see a battle at the top, but for pure brilliance and just dominating driving, it was there. And the Mercedes was suited to this, and in particular one sector, which was the final sector, sector 3, where I believe in qualifying it came across on the radio to Charles Leclerc, which he was just completely shocked by. He went, yeah, the Mercedes are taking 6/10 out of us in the final sector. 6/10 out of a fellow competitive car is huge. If it was 6/10 out of the McLaren Renaults, I'd understand, but...
Well, the one thing that I was looking at with that is, I was quite interested in that, the fact that they were saying you're losing 6/10 in a sector. But I was thinking back, and I think it was Ted Kravitz that said it when going through commentary. In China, Ferrari was 6/10 of a second quicker than the Mercedes in sector, it would be sector 2, wouldn't it? Sector 2 into sector 3. And Mercedes were over 7/10 of a second quicker through the corners, and that's where they were making up all of their time.
Exactly.
So that Mercedes is incredibly well built.
It's just really, really good through fast speed technical corners, and there aren't really any slow turning corners in there. It's just kind of well balanced cars that you can trust and get on the throttle early.
The one thing I'd say for the Mercedes is probably the one area where you could say they could probably look to improve in terms of cornering is probably those mid-speed corners. The high-speed corners, they've got the pace advantage, And even when you go into the low speed corners, so when you look at like the third sector at Spain, Monaco, even at Singapore to some extent, the Mercedes in race pace had it. It was just poor strategy from them that really gave Ferrari that opportunity to build that gap that they ended up with. So it's probably the mid-speed corners where they could build on that, and if they can get a little bit more performance from their engine, we're in an unfortunate position where with 2020 it's going to be another dominated season by Mercedes.
Yeah, and so obviously Hamilton dominated this race, and Ash is making F1 fans excited everywhere for another dominating season of 2020 by Mercedes. Unless you're a Mercedes fan, I think that's everyone going, not again.
Well,
But,
we can look at it and do the same thing. With Ferrari, they need to look at actually strapping more downforce onto the car.
a lot more.
Red Bull, they're another one. They need more straight line speed.
They need a better engine.
McLaren, they need to just bring everything up one more level, because they're in that little tier between themselves. So bring everything up one more level, and then they'll be competing. I shouldn't really look and do this for the whole grid.
I think we can stop at McLaren. Because they were the
But
best of the
we
rest.
all know where the cars need to improve. So and
it'd be
we're not
interesting to
engineers.
see. Yeah, it'd be interesting to see where they do actually improve. But yes, going from Mercedes dominating and Hamilton dominating, probably the only guy who would have provided us a good race at the front, unfortunately with having to replace an engine with obviously his engine blowing up in Brazil, was Valtteri Bottas. He was very quick all weekend, obviously that shiny new engine, but he was just naturally quick anyway, I think.
He was, and I think he probably would have won the race had he been at the front. The only thing that would have been interesting to see is if he'd been on the exact same strategy as Hamilton. So because he was further back, he did have that opportunity where when everyone started to pit around him, he was able to extend his first stint a lot more, and he didn't have to worry about being undercut by anyone really, because there wasn't that expectation of you're starting here so you need to be finishing.
He did have the trouble at the start though that DRS wasn't activated, which made overtaking more difficult for him, and he still managed to make good. I think he got all the way up to Hulkenberg.
He got stuck
pre-DRS.
Got stuck behind Perez for a bit, didn't he?
Yeah. But he did get past him.
But got past him, and then
I'm pretty sure he was behind Hulkenberg. Vettel or Leclerc had just pitted and come out behind him.
Yep.
And yeah, as soon as DRS kicked in, bang,
he was back on
he was past it.
Yeah. I thought it was quite interesting because it was 19 laps, wasn't it, where we didn't have DRS, and it was. I don't want to say that it was great battling throughout. I think it was because we had the mix of speeds at the time. And because it came so early in the race, there weren't those gaps already.
Yeah.
Had it come a few laps later, then things would have been different. But I think, personally, it showed that at the moment there is an over-reliance on DRS to be able to get an overtake done.
I think especially at tracks like Abu Dhabi, in terms of they rely on that for the catching going into the corners, and Paul Ricard.
You can say Singapore to some extent.
Yeah, but I think Singapore,
Singapore's better racing.
Yeah.
It's just
Singapore's different.
You set yourself up.
Because it's a technical challenge, isn't it?
And you set yourself up with the DRS, whereas in tracks like Abu Dhabi, you're relying on that to be able to actually make a move. So it wasn't the greatest thing.
No, but still from back to fourth was a mightily impressive drive, obviously getting ahead of both Vettel and Alexander Albon. Yes, that Mercedes, as seen by Hamilton, was far superior to its rivals in Red Bull and Ferrari, but it's still pretty impressive. When we usually see the guys come from the back, it's usually they go from the back and they finish sixth. He actually went better than that and finished 2 ahead of them.
Yeah, but he didn't do that well, did he? Because Sainz got podium the race before.
Ah, exactly, you see. Yeah, if he got a podium, I mean, Valtteri would have got a 10 out of 10 if he managed to go from back to podium. And he wasn't that far off.
No, he wasn't.
And you could argue and say, did he lose that second being stuck behind Hulkenberg without DRS? Ifs, buts and maybes, you can always say that within races. But moving on to the next point, and I think the driver we both want to talk about, because he's been Rookie of the Year for us, but we'll probably go through that more in detail in like our season review.
Yeah.
But Lando Norris, absolutely superb drive from him yesterday, wasn't it, Ash?
It was, and he did what he needed to, really, and that was getting past Sainz as soon as possible. And his overtake was incredible. He put his car in a position where he didn't really have a right to get it, but it was a clean overtake. There was contact, but the contact was more Sainz going into Norris.
Yeah.
And did you watch the analysis? I know you were doing the thing.
I was.
You were doing the live reaction.
There you go.
This
is why you're here.
Yeah, I was watching the live reaction, talking to you whilst watching analysis, and Norris actually didn't know what happened there.
Oh.
If you watch the replay in slow motion, his car actually kicks up off the curb, but it's because Sainz hit him that his car's bounced up, and he didn't know what had happened and just thought someone had hit him. He didn't realise it was Sainz that had done it, and
Brilliant.
It was quite funny watching him try and figure out how to use the SkyPad.
Oh no, it's Lando. I mean, he is the gift that keeps giving. On track with brilliant performances, and off track with his, I would describe it as infectious personality. He certainly yet has not been kind of tainted by the fame, and he just seems like a guy who loves F1 and a bit geeky about his drivers he loves in gaming.
And actually, I'm going to go for it. He probably gave me one of my highlights on the team radio. You wouldn't have heard it because it was on the cool-down lap. But he was talking to his engineer, started laughing, turned around and said to him, "Are you crying?" And then said, "No, I'm crying." And it was just that he was so happy for the season that he started crying whilst on team radio at the end. And yeah, it's probably one of my favourite for the season.
Oh, Lando, he is brilliant. And I think what was more fantastic, I spoke about it a little bit in the driver ratings yesterday, but obviously the one-stoppers worked. I spoke about in the qualifying live reaction that those guys who got knocked out in Q2 were actually in that advantage, that they were going to be on the harder compound and can make a one-stop work. Lando Norris made a one-stop work starting on the soft compound, and only on the very last lap to an absolutely superb overtake that we'll probably talk more about when we talk about Sergio Perez. But yet, to the last lap, making his one, he pitted the first out of the one-stoppers who completed the race. Mightily impressive race in terms of tyre management, pace that he kept up throughout that. Yeah, it was just all-round great drive.
In general, it was a great performance, and I was slightly disappointed that he did get overtaken, because I felt as if he deserved that best of the rest, because Perez, in all honesty, got to best of the rest because of strategy, not necessarily because of overall race pace and performance.
No, he did some good overtakes through it, and obviously the last one on Lando was a superb overtake.
Not taking that away from him, but the overriding factor is he had the advantage on the strategy.
Yeah, exactly.
That's where I'm saying about McLaren needing to take that step up in every aspect, because they've tried it in a few races, but if they were able to get into the top 10 on the medium tyres, I think both Sainz and Norris could definitely be competing with Albon for 6th place. And based on how the strategy calls are going, would be close to a Ferrari.
Haven't they changed the rule, and it's coming in next year, that the Q2 tyre rule is now
Has that
gone?
actually been confirmed though? Because I didn't think it had.
I thought it was confirmed, but I'm not sure.
Someone tell us below, because
if we got it wrong.
So Mike thinks it has been confirmed, and I thought it was just an idea that's out there and they're trying to bring through. But I don't think it has been. I'm not sure.
Okay. We'll see.
Someone can correct us.
But probably moves us on nicely to his teammate Carlos Sainz securing 6th in the Drivers' Championship. The real shame for his race is we weren't able to see that direct battle between him and Pierre Gasly. That would have been really great for me to see. But yeah, for him, he needed to overtake Hülkenberg on the last lap to secure 6th in the Drivers' Championship. He did it at the last overtaking point, or known overtaking point.
Yeah.
And was a great move on there. Went bravest, locked up, but made the corner.
Yeah, set him up brilliantly. So gave him the fake to the right and then came back on him. But if you watch the lap before, he did the opposite. And that was why he did. So he would have been able to get the overtake done the lap before, but he did the opposite, went left and then went for the outside. Because it was going into the chicane where you then become the inside.
Yeah.
So he tried it and it just didn't work because Hulkenberg was able to do what Norris unfortunately couldn't do with Perez, and was to just close the door and be like, no, wait. So he learnt from it, and then next lap did it, and it was actually a brilliant overtake, and it was disappointing. I use the word disappointing quite a lot when it comes to Sky, but it was disappointing that they didn't actually show it. It wasn't until
you got your clips on the apps after all.
Well, Sky showed it post-race, but they didn't show it until Sainz was actually being interviewed. So at that stage, you'd already had Daniel Ricciardo and Lando Norris interviewed. You'd already had Matteo Binotto interviewed, because he was interviewed before having to go to the stewards, but he didn't go in the end. So yeah, it was a good half hour, 40 minutes before you actually were shown that.
And it was like he said in his interview, I think, he was like, it's crazy, we've worked all season for this, it's come down to the very last race, and securing 6th at the last possible point that he could have secured 6th in the Drivers' Championship was, yeah, pretty special. And yeah, those moments, I know we can get caught up with the big trophies, and at the end of the day, Formula 1 is about winning the Drivers' Championship, winning the Constructors' Championship, but those kind of little battles within and little stepping stones, this is another stepping stone on McLaren's path to hopefully getting back and competing at the top of F1. And this is a major one, securing best of the rest in terms of constructors, and best of the rest including 2 drivers who had half a season at Red Bull in the Drivers' Championship. So
that was one thing that was quite funny. The fact that you had Crofty and Martin Brundle saying about, oh, it's okay, Sainz is going to get 6th when he was still in 11th, not realising that Pierre Gasly got 2nd in Brazil, and then when the penny dropped, he was saying, oh no, he does have to make this overtake.
Just like going,
and I was like,
oh no, he's got to go.
Wrong. And then they were looking at it, and then it was like, well, if Leclerc gets a penalty at this rate, Albon's going to end up getting it, and yeah. Crazy.
Absolutely crazy.
You can tell that the race wasn't that interesting.
We spent a lot of time going on that. They were lost. But yeah, that is Sainz, and that is McLaren as a whole. So we have kind of mentioned him before, and that is the driver who finished best of the rest. And as I keep banging on about it, because I think it's pretty impressive. For me, he has been the driver of the second half of the season. I kind of did a poll earlier on Twitter of first half of the season driver, second half of the season driver, and whole season the driver. I think Carlos is winning first half and whole season. Sergio Perez is, and Charles Leclerc and Sergio Perez are neck and neck for the other one. But for me, I think Sergio Perez has been superb. Only race he hasn't finished in the points has been Singapore. Best of the rest, obviously, in his home Grand Prix. Mexico was a great drive. Again, his tyre management and strategy puts him in a position where he is able to do it, and unfortunately for Lando, qualifying has backfired on him almost, which is why the discussion of the rules coming in play.
I definitely think that is something where they do need to look at, because you get such an advantage by being able to choose what tyres you start on, especially in countries where there's an ambient temperature, because for all you know, you can qualify on a Saturday and it be incredibly hot, and it'd be like, well, the softs are the ones you want to be going on. And then it drop off. No, it would be the other way around, wouldn't it? It'd be incredibly hot and you'd be like, oh, the mediums are the ones to go for because they're going to warm up quicker. And then you get to the next day and the temperature just drops. Like, it was Azerbaijan, wasn't it? Where that happened, and it does put you at a disadvantage by not being able to just be like, well, I want to start on these tyres. So it's one of those where it's something that has to be taken into account for strategy, but it does put the 4 guys that get into the top 10 at such a disadvantage in that midfield battle.
It probably would be interesting, and more interesting on a strategy front, whether qualifying was just a shootout, you forgot the tyre kind of meaning there. And then when it comes down to race day, depending on temperature or whatever the teams feel are best, they can start on whatever tyre compound they want out of the three of the soft, hard or medium. And then you'd naturally mix up races because teams would be on different strategies, and we've seen throughout the season when drivers and teams are on different strategies, it generally lends itself to better racing because they're having to kind of cover off and work out how each individual might work.
Yeah, and this race actually I think was a better representation of it because you actually had the Ferraris on the split strategy, and Vettel never looked in it really, did he?
No.
The Ferrari had their usual of not being able to warm up the tyres properly, which, you know, something they could improve on. But because they didn't warm up their tyres, weren't able to warm up their tyres quickly enough, at that stage Hamilton had already gone. Verstappen had managed to finally get his tyres back up to the temperature because he didn't straight off the line. And once that happened, Leclerc and Vettel were really in their own little battle. It was them battling themselves.
In fairness, you know, when Hungary, we were almost like they checked into the summer break early. It almost was a bit like they checked into the winter break early.
Yeah. So
in terms of with strategy, they tried some things, but it kind of felt like they were testing for 2020 rather than...
It didn't work for them.
No.
And as we say, it just shows how strategy can affect a race. Perez, though, fantastic drive. I know that I say about the fact that his strategy was the overriding factor. It was, but you can't take away from it, take away from his drive.
He puts himself in that. Hulkenberg, Kvyat were both on the one stop.
They tried it and it didn't work for them because Hulkenberg went ridiculously long, didn't he?
Yeah, I mean, Hulkenberg undercut both Perez and Kvyat on the first stop. Because of where he'd managed to get himself in it, and just faded away as the race went.
So, but no, he did well, and his overtake on Norris, yes, it was a fantastic bit of driving. He got his car in a position where Norris just wasn't able to close the door, and Lando said in the interview afterwards, it was brilliant driving from Perez to get past him. So,
I mean, like you said, Sainz had gone in to out and wasn't able to make that stick. Perez actually was able to make the outside stick, which was impressive, gave him the inside line onto going through. And earlier in the race as well, I think, which was important for him catching Lando, when we spoke about Nico being there, he did a very good overtake on Nico Hulkenberg. I believe it was the same corner or that section of 8 and 9 before that.
Well, the one thing as well...
to get him ahead. And he made overtakes at the right point during his race.
And also, one thing that is sort of not really looked at because it wasn't really part of his race, but his defensive drive against Bottas, I know that there wasn't any DRS, but he was positioning his car fantastically. So, going down the back straight where you end up losing a whole lane.
He's shown it
brilliantly.
He's shown it multiple times as well, because I believe in Monza he did the same to Verstappen when he finished ahead of Verstappen there when Verstappen went all the way to the back getting that front wing damage on the first lap. And also actually when he overtook Hulkenberg, it was 8 and 9 actually, because they then went into the DRS zone and Hulkenberg was obviously favourite to get alongside him there. But he squeezed him well enough, made it hard for him to overtake, and that is one of his big strengths. I would say Perez, his defending. He's quite a good defensive driver.
Yeah.
And then moving on to our last point, which kind of started off the race, which was a bit frantic. I suddenly got a message. I got a message from Ash going, "Poor Leclerc," and I'm like going, it's a bit of a delayed response to qualifying. And you're like, have you not heard about the fuel? And I'm like, no. Switch on Sky coverage. They're starting talking about this fuel thing. So there's a fuel discrepancy in what they had told the FIA, what they were holding, and what actually was in the car. Do you want to explain it a little bit more, Ash?
So basically, the teams have to just declare the amount of fuel they're putting in the car before the race, and when you're going out to the grid, the FIA can basically turn around and say, we want to weigh you. It's like using the weight bridge in qualifying.
Exactly.
They're able to do it. And when they weighed the Ferrari, it turns out they had 4.88 kilograms. Look at that, remembering those numbers.
Oh, that's pretty good. You're doing well on the numbers. Katie will make sure she'll recognise that in the comments.
But yeah, they had 4.88 kilos more fuel in his car than had been declared. So there was still confusion going through the race, and I was just baffled on it. And I know I said to you when you were doing the live reaction, there was two different opinions as to what had happened, and one was, as Red Bull saw it, and probably Mercedes and pretty much every other team, was that a technical directive had been broken. Now, if a technical directive had been broken, the stewards can effectively turn around and be like, you're disqualified. There's also the sporting directives, which is what Ferrari said it was, which, yes, disqualification is still a possibility, but there's a lot more leniency within that as to what the penalties can be. No one really knew what was going on. No. Ferrari didn't seem to know what was going on.
No. I mean, I don't think anyone really knew. I'm obviously looking at the Twitter side of things. There was just this constant stream of jokes being made of Formula 1 2020 season starts, still no verdict from stewards. Like waiting for Easter, still no verdict from stewards.
Well,
but
Christian Horner said that it's a cut and dry thing. They've declared an amount of fuel. That's not the case, so they've breached the directive, which would have meant that the penalty could have been given
But
pre-race.
we all know with the stewards this year, nothing's cut and dry.
So
no, we have to wait.
So yeah, there's a few ways you can look at this, and I said I wasn't going to bring them up, but you might as well. You know, it's the final one of the season.
Yeah, why not?
First one, you look at it. The stewards didn't bother giving a penalty because a penalty wouldn't have affected anything in any of the championships, because Verstappen got third place, finishing ahead of Leclerc, and Sainz got into the points for sixth, and there wasn't going to be any change to the constructors by a penalty being given. You can look at it that Ferrari's argument that they used with the stewards was the actual case, and it was that the overuse of fuel was on the basis of additional laps and basically just other things. So making sure there was enough fuel for an out lap, making sure there was enough fuel for an in lap. If the FIA decided they wanted to test the fuel at the end to ensure that fuel flow limits hadn't been breached, which is another one. The FIA can pick any car they want to do that to. So, you know, fair enough on that. Or you can look at it that Red Bull were probably looking at it, Mercedes probably looked at it, and those that think Ferrari had been cheating were looking at it, that it was simply Ferrari were cheating and they've been caught for doing it. That's not the case. No. And the first one isn't really the case.
No.
The second one's probably most likely, because otherwise...
Option number 2, please.
Well, it has to be, because otherwise a penalty would have been given.
Exactly.
So, yeah. But they're the only 3 ways you can really look at that, and in all honesty, does it matter? Not really on this one.
Got a fine.
If it won the race, got third in the championship, then yes, I can see that argument coming in that, yeah, maybe the penalty should be given, but it didn't really affect anything, and it wasn't going to.
And it was in a pretty impressive first season at Ferrari. Yeah. It was quite a nice way for Charles Leclerc to end off his season, and it is quite nice when the race to finish in the way that it had. It's quite nice for it to finish that way, essentially. Yeah. But that's kind of it. I mean, I think we've done well to beef out the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix review this long in terms of it. But hope you have enjoyed it, guys. But don't worry, the season's over. We're not going anywhere. We've got plenty of content coming out for you guys. And the first kind of stage of that is going to be Thursday. We start our new series with F1 Worldwide. We will be having Mark on to talk about can Red Bull compete for the title next year. So make sure you tune into that one. Then me and Ash will be doing our driver season ratings videos, and they will be coming out Saturday, Sunday and Monday. And then Tuesday, it's our usual review day. So what we'll do for you guys is we'll have a full, it'll probably be a long one, full season in-depth review of everything that's happened in 2019, our thoughts of the season, our kind of rookies of the years, driver of the years, that sort of thing. And look from there. And then obviously I think after that one we'll probably give you an update of what's going on further after that, because we've got lots of exciting things coming up. But
we hope they're exciting. We think they are.
We think they're exciting. Hopefully you guys agree too. But yeah, if you like this video, guys, give it a thumbs up.
Make sure to press the subscribe button so that you know where you're getting our videos go into your YouTube inbox. And if you press the bell icon, you'll get a notification when some of our winter content is coming out, and you'll be able to see what we're quite excited about, because as it's our first winter break, we've got to try and find ways to fill it, and we think we've got some good ideas. So hopefully you'll enjoy them as well.
What was it, 180 days?
180 days from Sunday.
It's a lot of videos. A lot of videos.
Yep. It's lucky we've got some good ideas coming out. Or at least we think they're good ideas.
We're good at this idea game. And also on that, I noticed we are on 142 subscribers, so 8 away from 150. And considering we started at Silverstone, obviously we're getting greedy now. We were very happy with 100, but if we could get to 150, that would also be...
Before Christmas.
Yeah,
that would be nice. Before Christmas we'd like 150, just because it means that what we're doing other people are enjoying, so yeah, it's great to see.
And if you are one of those 142 subscribers, thank you, and we're hoping we're going to see you through this winter break with lots of great F1 chats and contents. But comment down below, guys, what was your performance of the day? What you think of Lewis Hamilton's dominant drive? What did you think of Bottas' drive from the back? What did you make of the whole Leclerc fuel fiasco type of drama going on there? And also, what did you think of the kind of Lando Norris, Carlos Sainz, Checo, those sort of drivers and their performances? We'd love to hear from you guys in the comments. But for now, you F1 fans, keep racing!